Hello, I'm Jeremy, and welcome to my channel, Freedom of Expression. Today, we're going to talk about minimum wage and what I saw with Ben Shapiro and Representative Ro Kahana. He is a politician from California. Sorry about the flickering. I've just figured it out. I've got a lot of things to figure out. The light is flickering because of how dark and how bright it is with me and my shirt and my background. And so I'm gonna, at some point in time, I guess, have to look into purchasing some better lights that shine constantly throughout the recording to stop that. But it's the camera that's doing it, and it's because of the light and the darkness. And so they're talking about putting a $15 minimum wage in California. And this is ridiculous. From what I understand, is that the minimum wage is absolute trash. It's a joke. Now, that's just what I understand right now as of this moment. I could be completely wrong. What I'm always trying to do in these videos is to get to the truth of it and talk about the steps that I want the website to do to help deal with this. And so the conversation that they have here is crap. It's not even 10 minutes long of the actual conversation of the minimum wage. And it's the same things that have been kind of said a billion times before. And there's a lot of assumptions that are made. There's straw man arguments that happen. And it's a fault, I would say, more of Ben Shapiro, because this is his thing that he's doing. And this politician just contradicts himself and does straw man throughout the whole thing. So like one of the things that he says is that he's in support of small businesses, but then he'll say that I understand that this $15 minimum wage will destroy small businesses. Well, which is it? It's one or the other. It cannot be both. It cannot be fat and thin. You can't say you support small businesses while you're trying to destroy them. He says, I understand that this helps big business. He says he understands that this will destroy small businesses. It's like, and this is Ben Shapiro's fault, because it's double speak. He's saying both things because he's a politician, and that is, he's trying to get votes. He's trying to appease both sides. But with the minimum wage, and so before I get into it, if you like my videos and you understand what I'm talking about, hit the like button right now, so then that way more people will be introduced to my videos. And if you've watched a handful of these, about 5 or so, then subscribe, because obviously there's something that's connecting with you. So keep watching these so you can have an even clearer understanding, because I'm not going over anything by a long shot. There's a lot more to it. And the only way you're going to get a good sense of this is as I produce content and go into this stuff in detail, because we're going to talk about politics. We're going to talk about how you're spending your money, and that how this website that I'm going to build will lead to being able to help you with better decision making. I'm not here to persuade you one way or the other. I'm here to show you how lying causes all these problems, and that we go into circles. And then what I really need is, and also please share the link to Twitter and Facebook and Instagram so that other people can see this stuff. And then do a membership. I need to hire more people. And of like the first 10 people, roughly 4 of them are going to be content creators, and you will decide what content as a member. So do you want it to be about health, politics, electronics, whatever it may be? And then also, whenever the general topic, then you also get to specifically bring up topics. And if not, I mean, we'll have a whole list of them, and we'll just go over kind of what's the number one thing. And that's how we'll deal with a lot of that, because until the website gets up, we'll use people kind of the middle of the road kind of way until we get the website up, so we can have this really good information for everybody. And so with that said, the minimum wage is a joke, and it's because you absolutely do not need it at all. All this does is help create a monopoly for big businesses. And the guy even says it. He says that he understands that big business can absorb this cost by distributing it between the rest of the employees there, and that small business can't do it. Ben Shapiro talks about it, and he agrees with Ben Shapiro does a pretty good job of bringing up actual points. And this politician is like, well, I feel like, and my opinion is, it's like, I don't care. I don't care about your feelings. I don't care about your opinions. I want to know what the truth is. And just because you may think this way, which I don't think he does, because the way that he talks, it's like he should know better. But there's no way to prove it. My website isn't going to be perfect. I don't believe in perfection. I do believe in making things better, and this will make it a million times better. But the way the market handles it is that they lie, and everything is backwards. Everything is backwards. And they say, we don't have enough people to work in the labor market or any market, and so we need to have more people come into the country so we can fill these jobs. Wrong. Let me explain. If you have 1,000 people looking for a job and there's only 100 job openings for whatever field that it is, then these people over here, they're like, well, I had a job and I was getting paid $30 an hour and I had all these benefits. There's going to be someone else who's going to come along and say, well, I kind of need this job. I'll do it for $24 an hour. Someone else is going to come in and say, well, I'll do it for $12 an hour. Someone else is going to say, man, I'm desperate. I'm about to lose all this stuff. I've got a family. I will do it for minimum wage. And then this is how illegal immigrants operate. So I read this story of this young Hispanic woman where her family came over legally, and she was working at the Swift meat packing plant, and she was getting paid $14 an hour, and she was very happy with it. She didn't ever have to have government assistance or anything like this. She was able to take care of herself and her family. It's like, well, good. Then they started to stop. They stopped taking care of the facility, and accidents started to happen because they're doing butchering. And so people would get hurt, they would run out of their sick leave, and then they would lose their job. And then some other person was coming on in, and his name was like John Smith, but he didn't speak any English. He was from Guatemala. That was the language that they were speaking. And he would get the job, and on the books, they put it down for minimum wage instead of $14 an hour. He wasn't getting minimum wage. These people weren't getting minimum wage. They were getting like $5 or $6 an hour, and then someone else was pocketing the extra dollar or two that was there. And it's because criminals cannot go to the authorities. What is he supposed to do? Hey, I'm John Smith. I don't speak English. I speak Guatemalan, and he's going to get arrested and deported for doing all that stuff. So he gets taken advantage of. And the reason why he was getting the job was because all these people were giving like $500 to the people who work at the HR department. And it's the same thing that they do whenever you go for Social Security and all these other benefits. These are people too where they're not making a whole lot of money. And whenever somebody comes up and offers you $500 to get them into the system, and then say you have like 20 of these people that you do every single month, and they're all paying you $500 pop, you're making a lot of money. And that's whenever you hear these stories and they get busted, because you have some government employee who's making like $14 an hour. They're driving around in a really nice car that's well above their pay grade. It's because they're involved in some illegal activity doing this stuff. And for these people who are coming over illegally, this is great because they're living in a place where their floors are dirt. They're lucky if they have electricity, and the American dollar has more weight than their local currency. And so they get on these programs where they get HUD, Section 8 housing, and so they get housing for free, and they get all their utilities paid, and they get food stamps and medical and all this stuff. And so then that way, the money that they do get, they're able to send a good portion of this back home. And because it's American dollars instead of their local currency, they're able to buy a lot more because there's more purchasing power in the American dollar instead of their currency. So it's not good in any way. But anyways, back to it. Whenever you have a whole lot of people who are looking for a job and there's just a few jobs, that pushes the price down. But whenever you have it in reverse and you have like 1,000 jobs, but you only have 100 employees, then the opposite happens. And they're over here and they're like, well, I've been paying minimum wage. And then another employer is going to come along and say, man, we're growing. I'm not working from the house anymore. I'm going to be opening up a store. I really need the help. I can pay you $12 an hour. Someone else is going to come along and be like, well, we're opening several more places across the city. I can pay you more. We're opening across the state, across the country, around the globe. And so the wage goes up more and more and more and more. And especially today, because we have computers and the internet and all this electronics, you can now work at home and you don't have to be in a big city. And they're really having to compete hard. And that's what you want. And so if you want people in America, if you want your friends and family and their children to be able to get the best job and all the benefits and all that stuff, then you don't let every Tom, Dick, and Harry. The real answer to that problem is that they need to be able to do this stuff where they're at. And one of the things that we can do is that we can have an information site like this where we have the best, most accurate, up-to-date information possible so that they can do this stuff themselves. And then that way they don't have to do a dangerous trip going hundreds or thousands of miles, dealing with drug cartels and child trafficking and all these other horrible things associated with it. It's not like you're going to cross this imaginary line in the dirt, and because you've now touched American soil, that all your problems are going to go away. No, that's fantasy nonsense. How about we make the entire world better? Why don't we elevate the rest of these places? And one of the things that we can do is that we can give this information to them so that they can do this themselves where they're at. And so it's like the old Chinese proverb goes, is if you give a man a fish, he eats for a day. But if you teach him how to fish, they can eat for the rest of their lives. And so that's a metaphor. It's not a literal thing. And basically what it's saying is instead of don't be an enabler and giving it to them, help them with them being able to do it themselves. Teach them, give them the information so they can just do it. They don't need you in your lives. They need the information so they can do it themselves. And it's up to them if they want to or not, because there are plenty of people that they don't want to be materialistic. They don't want to spend 80 hours a week working. They would like to have some time dedicated to their friends and family, building up their social network and having good, strong ties. And it's like, what's wrong with that? Nothing. So if they don't want to live in a mansion or whatever, then let them decide for themselves. And if they're not living up to their standards, how about you mind your own business? And so that's what part of this website's going to do, is that it's going to give people the freedom to choose what they want, and so that they can express themselves in whatever manner of lifestyle that they want. If they want it to be materialistic, if they want it to be spiritual, if they want it to be social or whatever, then you can do that. More power to you. And so this whole argument that they have, Ben Shapiro does a much better job with it all. And whenever I listen to Thomas Sowell and that guy that was his mentor, what was his name? And they even talk Milton Friedman. There's no argument that a minimum wage is good. The argument is that it's bad. And all the research shows it. And so an example of this is that if you're in an education system where it sucked and you had bad teaching and you had bad standards, and then you go out and your skills are crap and you can't get a job because you can't perform. But if there's no minimum wage, then it used to be like really back in the day that you could go work at a hospital low level as an orderly, and you could actually work your way up really high. And what was really good about that was that gave the hospital or the clinic or wherever the power to specifically train you in what that they needed you to do. And that's really pertinent today, because with all of the technology changes that we have, there's a lot of change that's going on, and the hospitals and the clinics and all this need that power to do it. And so now we get hindered and we get slowed, because now they say, well, no, you have to go to this school, which they're still doing the old stuff because they don't have the latest technology available to them, because having the most advanced MRI or X-ray machine is expensive and they can't afford it. And it's like, well, why should they? They're not doing that. They're not a hospital. It's a school. So what better place to actually learn than on-the-job training? So if you don't agree with me, I don't care. I'm not here to persuade you one way or the other. I'm here to show that there are problems with this, that we've already had this discussion a billion times. Another example is the wage gap, that back in 1983 with this show called Firing Line, which is still around today, the host at the time, William F. Buckley Jr., has Thomas Sowell on as a guest. And Thomas Sowell just destroys it on why the wage gap is a myth. And they have this female lawyer who's a feminist, and she's saying all this stuff. And it's like, she's an idiot, because she asks the same thing 3 times and she just does not pay attention at all. I don't know what her malfunction is, but it's ridiculous. And I'm tired of this. And the only thing that I've noticed the difference between decades ago and today is that the people who say that there's a wage gap, nothing has changed with them. But the people who say that, no, the wage gap is false, that it's a myth, their arguments have only gotten stronger and a lot stronger. And whenever they try to do this, like the BBC, the British Broadcasting Company, they did this. And they said, well, we're equal opportunists and all this stuff, and so we're going to do an internal audit to make sure that the women are getting paid as much as the men. What ended up happening was that they found out actually the women were getting paid more than the men, and that they had to give the men raises. And you know what? Still, that was wrong. And it's because you're talking about all these variables that make people unique. And it's like, okay, so what are you talking about? You're talking about a wage gap. What do you do? Why do you have a wage? You have a wage because you have a job, because you need money so you can go buy things. What can you buy? Well, almost everything, right? It's insane the amount of things that you can buy. And so how do you factor all that in? You know, it's like, well, how many houses do you have? How many cars do you have? How many children do you have? What was your family life at home? Did both of your parents work or one? Did you have to get tuition money, or did your parents cover it all? Did you have to live in a dorm? How far did you have to travel? Did you travel by plane? Did you have your own car? Did you have to do by rail? How big were your loans? If you had to have student loans, does your spouse work? How much money does your spouse have? All these things, everything contributes. And that's why you can't even do this. Because not only does this not apply to men versus women, that's why it doesn't even apply with men versus men and women versus women. I'm not like other men. There are men who are big monsters who could just run me over, just obliterate me, and there's nothing I can do about it. There are men who are incredibly rich, and it's crap how they want to cherry pick these men who are, I would say that they're insane because they work insane hours. And if you want to know how crazy they are, there was a show called The Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, and they still have shows like that today. Usually they're more of a documentary kind of form. And they talk about how stupid these people are, that they will go out and they will buy a yacht that's 30 feet longer than their rival because they have some kind of insane nonsense going on inside of their rational thinking there. It's like those are not normal people, and I would say not well-grounded. It's like they know one thing, and they figured out how to make all this money, but their social life and their family life and their morals and their values and all this other stuff is it's horrible. It's just not right. It's not good at all. And that's why part of what I'm going to do is that I have a second channel called Practical Focused Improvement, where I really want to make sure that I have my own values and morals down well, because I'm not going to fall into that for 1 second. So what's my time? So I have to cut this because I'm only looking to shoot about 10 to 15 minute videos. I definitely have more to say on this. Watch this video. Can you find the straw man arguments that this guy makes? Can you see where Ben Shapiro is not staying on topic and letting him do these straw mans? If you don't know what it is, look it up. I will get into that a little bit too later down the road. So I have just so much more to say. That this is just the beginning. So please hit that thumbs up. You should. You've watched it this far. If you've really enjoyed this and you understand it, subscribe. Oh my goodness, we've got so much more to do. And I hope, if anything, that this makes you aware as to how much lying and fake news and false information is out there. You know, if I'm wrong with this wage gap, it's because there's weak things in the argument somewhere. And so the website is going to allow people to post their questions or concerns and then upvote or downvote all of this stuff so that whenever it does come up again, we know what to focus on. Because right now, they haven't said anything new. It's the same thing that has been said 100 times already. What's new to change it? And that's what I care about. And if you can show that the minimum wage is actually a good thing for the workers, that's great. If you're wanting to talk about the productivity of a business, then Starbucks did this where that they were having problems with customers who were coming in and they were kind of snotty, you know, they had their nose up in the air and they were like, oh, I know better. And they came up with a program to help deal with this for their employees. And apparently it worked incredibly well. And it's like, well, that's what you should do. So then that way you have a very specific problem with a very specific answer just for that. This whole wage gap thing, it affects so much. And that's why there's too many variables. And that's why you have to leave it to the free market, because the only people who are going to be able to resolve this are the people who are actually engaged with it. And one of the other things that he said was, he brings up Milton Friedman, and it's like, well, what happens if you have a small town? It's like, who says every problem has an answer? It's like that's been most of history, that there have been plenty of problems that we just didn't have an answer to. And sometimes some of those answers do come. And so today, the answer to that is that it doesn't matter if you're in a small town, because now a lot of jobs are being offered where you can work at home. And so you have that competition. So if you're wanting to get to the truth of it, my website is, it's not going to be run by me. It's going to be me putting in a bunch of automated things, being able to pose your own questions, your own concerns, you being able to upvote and downvote. I'm not going to do that. I just want to bring forth the truth. So I hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.